All right, so we've got this stack of articles about this trade war and like the global impacts. It's pretty intense to see how these policies are changing things up, wouldn't you say?
The thing is, the real worry is how all these disruptions are affecting, well, everything. We're seeing the bad economic stuff, sure, but it's like a ripple effect, Politics are getting all tense, global markets are like on a tightrope, and everyone's just kind of freaking out about what's next.
Okay, so let's break down this whole tariff thing. Can you like remind us what they even are and how they work?
Yeah, definitely. Basically, a tariff is like a tax on things we buy from other countries.
Gotcha.
When something gets shipped in, the company that's bringing it in has to pay this extra fee.
Okay, so like from these articles, it looks like the new administration has been pretty aggressive with these tariffs.
Oh, yeah, totally. They're kind of using tariffs like a political tool, going after allies like Canada and Mexico, but also, economic rivals like China. We're seeing a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum from Canada and Mexico and China. They're facing even bigger tariffs, something like 20%, on a whole bunch of different things.
And like these tariffs are on things we use every day, right? It's not just some random stuff. I'm seeing articles about steel and aluminum, sure, but also agricultural products and even pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, and that's what's so scary about it. It's not some boring, behind the scenes economic policy. This stuff directly affects the things you buy every single day. Your car, the food you eat, even your medicine.
It's kind of crazy to think about how it'll affect us, One article even said that the 25% tariff on Canadian steel could mean a car costing an extra $3,000.
Exactly. And that $3,000, that's just one example. These tariffs could seriously make everyday stuff way more expensive for everyone. It's like a hidden tax sneaking into your wallet without you even knowing.
And it's not just us consumers who'll feel it, right?
Yeah.
Businesses, people who work in those industries, especially farmers, they're already taking a hit because they're losing those important export markets.
You're right. We're already seeing it happen. China, for instance, they hit back with tariffs on U.S. agricultural products. They're directly aiming at American farmers.
Right.
And then you have places like Ontario in Canada. They're retaliating by putting tariffs on energy exports to the U.S. It just shows how interconnected everything is.
Like a back and forth, like a trade war where everyone's trying to protect themselves, but in the end, everyone gets hurt.
Exactly. And it's super frustrating because these retaliatory tariffs are hitting American businesses and workers just as hard as the ones they're trying to punish. It's like shooting themselves in the foot.
And it's not just individual businesses or consumers who are getting hurt. One article talked about how these trade wars are making people worry about a global recession.
Yeah, that's a real possibility. Global stock markets are already going crazy because of the instability and uncertainty these disputes are causing. If things get worse, it could trigger a huge domino effect, pushing the whole world into a recession.
It's all feeling so chaotic, Like, is there any good news? Any light at the end of the tunnel?
I mean, there's always hope, right? But we need a complete change in how we see this. We need solutions that work for everybody, not just a few people.
So one thing the administration is saying is that these tariffs will get companies to start making things in the U.S. again.
Yeah, that's the whole reshoring idea, but it's way more complicated than they make it sound. There are a ton of obstacles to bringing manufacturing back to the U.S.
Like what kind of obstacles are we talking about?
Well, a big one is the cost of labor. Labor is just so much more expensive here in the U.S. than it is in places like China.
Right.
And then you've got all these regulations and limitations with our infrastructure, which makes moving their operations incredibly hard for companies.
So it's like, even if a company wanted to reshore, it might not even make sense for them financially.
Exactly. And there's another important thing to think about. Even if reshoring was possible, it wouldn't automatically mean lower prices for us. It could actually make things even more expensive.
How does that work?
Well, if companies have to pay more to make things in the U.S., guess what? Those increased costs get passed on to us, the consumers, in the form of higher prices. It's like the opposite of what they're trying to do. The policies that are supposed to help American workers and consumers could end up hurting them even more. It's crazy how easy it is to get lost in all the economic jargon, all those technical terms and numbers,
Oh, tell me about it. Sometimes I feel like I need a degree in finance just to understand what's going on.
But the thing is, we can't forget about the real people this is affecting.
Right. Like these decisions are impacting actual people's lives, their jobs, their families, everything.
Exactly. One of these articles talks about how tariffs are affecting the pharmaceutical industry, like the companies that make medicine. It's saying that these tariffs could actually make life-saving drugs harder to get for people who really need them.
That's messed up. It's like we're punishing the people who are already struggling the most.
And for what? To help out industries that are already having a tough time competing globally.
That just doesn't make sense. We have to do better.
I think part of the problem is that we've lost our sense of empathy. We're so disconnected from each other, so focused on our own little worlds that we've forgotten about the bigger picture.
It's like we're all in our own bubbles, completely unaware of what other people are going through.
And that's exactly what those in power want. They want us divided and distracted so we don't question them or demand change.
It's the oldest trick in the book, divide and conquer.
You got it. But we can't let them win. We have to come together, try to understand each other, and have some compassion.
That sounds great in theory, but how do we actually do that in a world that feels so divided right now?
I think it starts with actually listening to each other, trying to see things from other people's perspectives. We need to have honest, respectful conversations about the problems we're facing and how we can fix them together.
I think that's a good place to start, but we also have to be willing to challenge our own beliefs and biases.
Oh, for sure. We all have blind spots. We all have things we need to unlearn.
It reminds me of that quote by Maya Angelou. Do the best you can until you know better. That when you know better, do better.
I love that quote. It's so true. It reminds us that we should always be learning and growing as people.
It also reminds us that we're all on this journey together.
Exactly. We need to support each other, lift each other up, and work together to make things better.
This conversation is giving me some hope. Thanks for talking about this with me. It's giving me a lot to think about and even more to act on.
Of course. I'm glad we had this chat. It's so important to talk about these things, to challenge the way things are, and to imagine a better future.
Reading through these articles, it's clear that the administration is using these trade policies to bully other countries into doing what they want.
Yeah, it's like they think that just because the U.S. has all this economic and military power, they can boss other countries around.
And it's totally backfiring. Countries are pushing back, they're putting up their own tariffs, and they're forming alliances that don't include the U.S.
It's like they can only see the short-term wins and have no clue about the long-term consequences of their actions.
We're ruining trust, damaging relationships, and messing up the global order that the U.S. helped to create.
It's a dangerous game, and we could all lose.
So what's the alternative? If what they're doing is so bad, what kind of trade policies should we be pushing for?
This is where the progressive agenda comes in. It's about fighting for a trade system that's fair, just, and sustainable.
Can you give me some specifics? What would that look like in real life?
Well, it starts with trade agreements that put the needs of workers, consumers, and the environment ahead of corporate profits.
So things like guaranteeing fair wages, safe workplaces, and protecting the environment.
Exactly. It's about making sure that everyone benefits, not just the big corporations.
That makes sense. What else can we do to move towards a more fair and sustainable way of trading?
We need to invest in our own industries and infrastructure here in the U.S., but it has to be done sustainably and fairly.
So instead of propping up old industries, we should be investing in renewable energy, public transportation, and making sure everyone has a place to live.
Yeah, exactly. It's about building an economy that works for everyone, not just the rich.
And that means investing in education and job training so people have the skills they need to succeed in a global economy that's changing all the time.
Absolutely. It's about empowering people, not just corporations.
This all sounds great, but is it even possible?
It won't be easy, but I do believe it's possible. We need to change the way we think. We have to move away from this me-first attitude that's been around for too long.
It's about recognizing that we're all connected and that we have a responsibility to take care of each other and the planet.
Exactly. It's about building a world where everyone has a chance to thrive.
That's something worth fighting for.
I agree.
Let's talk about how other countries are reacting to these new trade policies. We already mentioned China's tariffs, but what are some other examples?
Well, the European Union is a good example. They've put tariffs on a bunch of American products, like Harley-Davidson motorcycles and bourbon.
It's like they're targeting things that are really American.
Yeah, they want to hit where it hurts, both economically and symbolically.
And it's not just the EU. We're seeing similar reactions from Canada, Mexico, even India.
The message is clear. The rest of the world isn't just going to sit back and let the U.S. call all the shots.
It feels like a turning point in global relations. Like the old way of doing things is falling apart and something new is trying to take its place.
It's a time of uncertainty and change, but it's also a time of opportunity. We have a chance to create a new system, one that's based on cooperation, fairness, and respect.
But how do we get there? It feels like we're stuck in this system of conflict.
We have to start talking to each other. We need to build bridges and understand each other's perspectives.
That's where organizations like the United Nations and the World Trade Organization come in, right?
Exactly. These groups give countries a place to come together and work towards common goals.
But those institutions have been weakened in recent years, especially with the U.S. withdrawing from agreements and undermining their authority.
True, but that doesn't mean they're useless. We need to make them strong again. Give them the resources and power they need to deal with global challenges like trade and climate change.
It sounds like a huge challenge, but it's important if we want to avoid a future full of conflict and instability.
I completely agree. The stakes are high. We have to work together to create a more peaceful and prosperous world for everyone.
Let's go back to reshoring for a minute. The administration is pushing it as a way to fix the trade deficit and bring back manufacturing jobs.
It sounds good on the surface, but there are a lot of problems with that idea.
One of the biggest worries is how it would affect people like us, the consumers. If companies have to pay more to make things in the U.S., those costs will probably get passed on to us as higher prices.
Exactly. And that would be terrible for families that are already struggling to pay their bills.
Plus, reshoring could actually cause job losses in other areas, like transportation. It's not a simple fix.
You're right. We need to think about the bigger picture, not just the immediate impact on one specific industry.
And we can't forget about the environmental impact. Bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. would increase transportation costs and carbon emissions.
Absolutely. Sustainability has to be a part of any conversation about trade. Reshoring could actually hurt our efforts to fight climate change.
So it sounds like reshoring, even though it's supposed to be a patriotic solution, could actually create more problems than it solves.
I think that's a fair assessment. We need to be careful about these simple solutions that promise quick fixes. This trade war needs a smarter approach that considers workers, consumers, and the environment.
Earlier you said that one of the administration's goals is to contain China. How does this trade war fit into that strategy?
The tariffs on Chinese goods are a direct attempt to weaken their economy. They think that if they make Chinese products more expensive, companies will move their operations somewhere else.
But is it actually working? China is already fighting back with their own tariffs, which are hurting American businesses.
You're right, this trade war is hurting both sides. It's not even clear if it's doing anything to contain China.
Some experts are even saying that this could backfire and make China stronger in the global economy.
That's a real possibility. If the U.S. keeps pushing away its allies and sticking with these protectionist policies, it could create an opportunity for China to step in. They're already building stronger relationships with other countries and expanding their influence in places like Africa and Latin America.
So instead of containing China, this trade war could help them become even more powerful.
It's a scary thought, and it shows how important it is to be smart and diplomatic in international relations. If we want a stable and successful world, we need to work with China, not against them.
It feels like everyone's playing a high-stakes poker game, trying to outsmart each other.
That's a good way to put it. But the problem is, there are no real winners in this game. We all lose in the end. We need to change the rules of the game so that everyone has a chance to win.
We've talked a lot about the negative effects of these trade wars, but I'm curious about positive changes. Are there any countries or organizations doing things differently, working towards a more fair and sustainable trade system?
You know, even with all the bad news, there are some good things happening. The fair trade movement is a great example. They're working hard to make sure that farmers and workers in developing countries get paid fairly for what they produce.
So they're trying to make the whole system more ethical and transparent.
Exactly. It's about making sure everyone benefits from trade, not just the big corporations.
Another interesting group is the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. They're trying to get clothing brands, retailers, and manufacturers to work together to reduce the negative impacts of the fashion industry.
That's awesome. The fashion industry has a huge impact on the world, and reducing its negative effects is crucial for a sustainable future.
It's good to see some companies taking responsibility and trying to make things better.
Absolutely. It shows that things are changing, that people are realizing we need to do things differently.
But we need more than just a few companies doing the right thing. We need to change the whole system.
I agree. That's why it's so important to support policies that promote fair trade, protect the environment, and guarantee workers' rights.
It's about creating a world where everyone has the opportunity to succeed, not just a select few.
That's definitely something worth fighting for.
Absolutely. One thing that keeps coming up is the administration's argument that tariffs are necessary to save American jobs.
Yeah, that's the typical protectionist argument. They think that by making foreign goods more expensive, people will buy more American-made products, which will supposedly create more jobs here.
But it's not that simple, right?
Not at all. First of all, tariffs often mean higher prices for everyone, which cancels out any benefits from making more things in the U.S.
So even if we create some jobs in manufacturing, we could lose jobs in retail and other sectors if people can't afford to buy as much.
Exactly. It's a lose-lose situation.
And then there's the possibility of other countries putting up their own tariffs in retaliation, which could hurt American businesses and lead to even more job losses.
You're right. Tariffs can easily start a trade war that hurts everyone involved.
It seems like a short-sighted strategy that will backfire.
It is. It completely ignores how interconnected the global economy is. We live in a world where goods, services, and money are constantly moving across borders.
Trying to isolate ourselves is not only impossible, but also bad for our own economy.
Exactly. We need to be part of the global economy, not try to escape it, but we need to do it in a way that's fair, just, and sustainable.
So that means working on trade agreements that protect workers, the environment, and human rights.
It also means investing in education and job training so that people have the skills they need to succeed as the economy changes.
And it means working with other countries to tackle big problems like climate change and poverty.
It's a lot to do, but it's necessary if we want to create a better future for everyone.
It seems like a lot of these problems are caused by a lack of long-term thinking and a focus on quick wins.
You're right. We're so focused on the next quarter's profits or the next election that we've lost sight of the bigger picture.
We need to start thinking about how to create a sustainable and equitable future for future generations.
I completely agree. It's time to start thinking about the legacy we're leaving behind.
Let's talk about the impact of this trade war on the global economy. We've mentioned the stock market and the possibility of a recession, but what are some other things that could happen?
One big concern is that it could mess up global supply chains. A lot of companies rely on a complicated network of suppliers and manufacturers around the world.
So if tariffs make it more expensive to import certain things, those supply chains could get disrupted, leading to shortages or delays.
Exactly. And that could have a ripple effect throughout the entire economy, affecting businesses of all sizes and consumers.
Another worry is inflation. If tariffs make imported goods more expensive, it could lead to higher prices for everything.
Yeah, that's a real possibility. And that could reduce people's purchasing power and lower their standard of living, especially for those who are already struggling financially.
This is all starting to sound pretty bad. Is there any hope for a positive outcome?
There's always hope, but we need to change direction. We need to move away from these protectionist policies and work together on trade.
You mean things like negotiating fair trade agreements, investing in sustainable development, and tackling global challenges together?
Exactly. It's about understanding that we're all connected and working together to create a more prosperous and equitable world for everyone.
You've mentioned fair trade agreements a few times. Can you explain what those are and how they're different from the current trade deals that are causing so much controversy?
Sure. Fair trade agreements are designed to benefit everyone involved, not just the big corporations. They include provisions that protect workers' rights, the environment, and human rights.
So things like fair wages, safe working conditions, and strong environmental protections.
Exactly. It's about creating a level playing field so that all countries can benefit from trade, not just the ones with the most power.
That makes a lot of sense. Are there any examples of fair trade agreements that are already in place?
One example is the EU-Canada Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, or CETA. It's a progressive trade deal that includes strong protections for labor, the environment, and sustainable development.
It's good to see some countries taking a more ethical and responsible approach to trade.
It's a sign that things are changing, that people are demanding a fairer and more sustainable global trading system.
But we can't let up. We can't get complacent.
I agree. The stakes are too high. We need to keep speaking up and demanding a trade system that works for everyone, not just the wealthy and powerful.
It's crazy, right? Like diving into this whole trade war thing, there's just so much information out there. It's easy to feel totally lost. Like, where do you even start to find stuff you can actually trust?
Oh, yeah, totally. It's like we're drowning in news and opinions and analysis from every direction. It's hard to know what to believe, to separate the real stuff from all the noise.
And that's exactly why I think these deep dives are so important. We're trying to give a clear, focused look at this trade war and what it all means.
Yeah, we're going deeper than just the basic facts. We're giving you context, digging into the details, and showing you different perspectives.
We want to give you, the listener, the tools to really understand what's going on and form your own opinions.
Because, let's be real, this isn't just some theoretical discussion. This stuff affects real people's lives, you know?
One of the articles we looked at really focused on how bad these tariffs are for American farmers. They're losing those big export markets, and they're facing some serious financial problems because of it.
It's really sad, you know? These farmers are getting hit hard by something they had absolutely no control over.
And it's not just the farmers. Businesses of all sizes are struggling with all this uncertainty in the global market.
Yeah, those tariffs are adding extra costs, messing up supply chains, and making it super tough for companies to plan for the future.
It's like we're shooting ourselves in the foot, you know?
I know, right? Like we're hurting our own economy and making ourselves look bad on the world stage.
But, I mean, it's not too late to change things, right? We can still make a difference.
Absolutely. We have to demand better from our leaders and make them accountable for creating a trade system that's actually fair, just, and sustainable.
Yeah, it's time to put people and the planet ahead of corporate greed.
I'm with you on that.
So let's think about the long-term effects of this whole trade war thing. We've talked about a potential recession, but what else could happen down the line?
One big worry is that all this tension is going to erode trust between countries. These trade disputes are creating rifts that could take years, maybe even decades, to repair.
It's like we're undoing all the progress we've made towards a more cooperative, interconnected world.
And that could have a huge impact on the entire planet. It could make it way harder to tackle big problems like climate change, poverty, and global health.
I'm also concerned that these trade tensions could spill over into other areas, like security and diplomacy.
Yeah, we're already seeing countries spending more on their militaries and taking a more aggressive stance in international
It
relations.
feels like we're on the verge of another Cold War, with the U.S. and China as the main rivals.
It's a scary thought, and we need to do everything we can to avoid it.
So how do we stop this trade war from getting even worse?
The first thing is to try and calm things down. We need to talk to each other, find some common ground, and work together on solutions that benefit everyone involved.
And we have to realize that we're all in this together. We need to move away from this winner-takes-all mentality and start working together to solve global problems.
Yeah, it's time to bring back diplomacy and multilateralism.
I love that. It reminds us that we don't have to be stuck in this endless cycle of fighting and disagreement. We can choose a different path.
You're right, the future isn't set in stone. We create it through our choices and actions.
This whole deep dive has been really eye-opening. It's helped me see the trade war in a new light and understand how much is at stake. But you know what? I'm actually feeling a little bit hopeful too.
Me too.
I think we have the power to create a better future, but it's going to take courage, compassion, and a lot of people working together.
I couldn't agree more. The challenges are big, but so is our potential. We have to remember our shared humanity, our creativity, and our determination to build a world where everyone can thrive.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and inspiring us to make a difference.
It's been a pleasure. And remember, every action we take, no matter how small, contributes to building a more just and sustainable world.
And that's what this deep dive is all about. We want to give you, the listener, the knowledge and motivation to make informed choices and be a force for positive change.
Go out there and make a difference. The world needs your voice, your actions, your commitment.
That's all for this episode of The Deep Dive. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey.
Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep fighting for a better future.